history of this group? Is it like NYU founded, or most
I
of you
don't,
guys know each other through like the program, right?
yeah, I think Melissa might
Or
know more. I kind of was just brought in later.
No, I think Mandy definitely chime in too, but I think John Kelly saw a need to create a community that was both intentional and useful. So sharing best practices, um, as well as just techniques and trends and emerging capabilities and functionality in a way that was non-confrontational and not intimidating, but also helping each other kind of create opportunities. Um, and so I think he brought together a mix of some NYU folks, but also those who he was just meeting and networking with. So Roots might be partially NYU, but also really John and his network, and then the other networks that were brought in from people like Mandy and Tim.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
And
that's
how
probably a
long has
good
it been going?
segue. What? Sorry.
How long? How long has it been going on? 2 years?
Not even. I think it's really been maybe a year and a half. Like I don't really think it's been because it wasn't up and running through COVID. Yeah, so probably a year and a half, maybe. I can't. I mean, honestly, times I feel like I'm in a weird void as it relates to time. So I don't think it hasn't been that long.
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I think I met John like maybe like 6 months ago or so. I don't know when, so I didn't know how long it was going by the time I started. But yeah, I'm the same. I have a weird time feels dilated, so I may be totally off on how long it's been. So
No, it feels like it's just getting developed, and you guys are working to define what it is. I will have to jump at the half hour just so you know, but yeah,
yeah.
I think everything everybody's doing is great. It just sounded like you guys wanted to yourselves have more of a definition around maybe the Friday things specifically, right?
Yeah, I think John wanted to be here. We had something going on. So yeah, I think this was a time um, to kind of, I guess, recalibrate and talk about, what we want to focus on. Because I think my impression, the Friday thing has been going pretty well and pretty steady. But John wanted to do some different things around video and stuff. And, um, just for different reasons, it's been harder to get that piece going. But I think we just wanted to have a discussion about, what would be useful, um, for people, like what would make people want to be part of the community, or are there ways that they would want to contribute? And like for me, for example, like I'd like to do more written stuff, like maybe do like a newsletter or something. If there's other people that are interested in that, we've been working on some ways to kind of get more organized around like creating like a registration print page, having like a calendar of events so that it's easy for people to see like what we have going on, different things like that. So I mean, probably good. We could start. If people want to introduce themselves, like maybe tell a little bit about where you're from, what you do, kind of how you got involved, and if you want to share about kind of what you're looking for. So I'll go ahead and start since I'm already talking. My name's Tim Whitley. I live in Stillwater, Oklahoma, director of HR technology at Oklahoma State University. So I've been in HRIS field for about 10 years now. And I think that for me, I started getting really active on LinkedIn. It's almost a year ago. That's kind of how I met John, but I know for me, like when I started out in HRIS, it was just very isolating. Like there wasn't a lot of people that did it. I was figuring out a lot of stuff on my own. Other than like vendor forums and things, I didn't really find a lot of people. Like I started getting involved with like the HR association, but most of the people in the HR association were HR people and they didn't really understand the tech side of things. So really my passion has been for the last year is like trying to provide resources for HRIS people or HR people that want to become more tech savvy or understand what's going on in the HR tech world. So for me, like I really saw this as an opportunity to develop some community and community resources and, potentially give also, I think there's a lot of people that want to be able to share what they're learning and share their knowledge, but need a good kind of a safe space, supported space to get started. So that's kind of for me how my goal and my passion for this is. So who's next?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Laura Ezel, and I am in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm very close to Tim geographically, and we went to high school together. It's a completely wild coincidence that we find ourselves in the same field.
Yeah.
The HR group that he mentioned is a group that I was in as I was just sort of beginning to be interested in HRIS. I've spent most of my career as a recruiter generalist, but in the past several years, since really we've implemented UKG, which before that we had a really old system that wasn't robust at all. But since maybe 2019, I've really been immersed in learning all about HRIS, and now that's my title, HRIS analyst. So I'm trying to grow into that title. And I really would love to get to know all of you and have a community where just like probably the reason that you're all here to get connected, have resources and support. I would love to learn all about what you guys are involved in and your specialties and what you're up to. So let's see what else. Yeah. I think I hit all the points. That's me. Nice to meet you.
That's great. Nice to meet you. Thank you. And Tim, just to know, like when you guys did you just show up at the same meeting and you're like, we went to high school together, or so it's not like you actually talked about this at a reunion.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we met. I think we saw each other at like it was Tara is the Tulsa. It's like the Tulsa Human Resources. I think we sat together at a meeting and randomly. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess since I'm talking, I'll just go next. But hello to everybody. Daniel McDonald, a lot of familiar faces, and I think I had the opportunity to present here once upon a time, and it was a lot of fun. I failed to record it, unfortunately, but I think it ended up being a really interesting discussion. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate about these communities is that it's bringing together people like us, the practitioners, the people who need to make it happen, with some of the big thinkers. Like I know that some of the ONA discussions that are being had, it's like those are really specialized skills and things that we can all learn from. And I'm even bringing it to my organization, and they're saying like, "Oh, what are you talking about? Organizational network analysis. This is amazing, right?" Like, so I think it's through groups like these that we all teach each other, we share, we think about how we're solving problems. Like to the point, Laura, HRIS analyst, I have a couple on my team, and I'm trying to figure out what the word analyst means. Because I have an assumption of what I think it means, but I don't know.
Apparently, we analyze things, maybe.
Well, I know what they're doing isn't analyzation, but I mean, they're analysts in the sense of they have a good head on their shoulders. They're being asked to just push data from one place to another, and often don't have an idea of why it's being asked of them, so that they can't provide any context. But that'll be my rant. I'm just excited about this group. I want it to keep going. I think my only pitch would be: it seems like there's a lot of consternation about like how are we defining the group. I see it as right now 8 unique individuals who all work in the space and probably have their own online personas and things that they want to talk about, whether it's analysis for retention or an HRIS optimization kind of like cloud API platform that we use or something. you know, in a way, I don't want to make it too narrow, but I think what's nice about it is the specialization. Like all of you guys are doing some really highly specialized stuff. And how can we make it applicable and help our stakeholders understand the value of it? See, I will hand off to Mandy.
Hi, I'm Mandy Wellington, and I know some, but not all. And so hopefully I'll get a chance to meet with some of the folks that I haven't had a chance to chat with, like Laura, etc., and Connie. I am the former executive director of talent development for Gray Group, it's an advertising company. And right now just doing some, small scale consulting work and just looking for my next opportunity. But I joined up with the group through John, and we were connected through NYU and our master's program, which is very analytics and technology focused. So that's sort of my area and space that I'm, really excited about, and sort of how to leverage that within the talent development space. So I am in Brooklyn, in New York, and for me, what I'd like to have happen, at least for my participation in this group, is really about community building and education and sharing. Similar to what Daniel said, which is everybody has sort of their lens, and sort of being able to see into someone else's sort of purview or their sort of space, and trying to see how that might impact the work that I'm doing or will do in the future. For me, so community building, and also really I started off really much more focused on the analytics side, so that continues to be an interest for me, and certainly like how to leverage the tech. But I think what would be really impactful for me is really making sure that the work we do, whatever it is, because it could be so many things, that we are really clear on what the business impact is. Because I'd like to have a space and a resource where we can really focus on, when we bring things to an organization, that it is sort of like we're clearly defining the impact. And so that to me is, I want to make sure whatever we do, that's really a critical component, which is, being able to define and being able to sort of talk through and show the impact. And in terms of just, Tim, I'd love to be able to get involved with like a newsletter. That was sort of the first part of what I was doing with John. So that kind of stuff is really exciting to me as well. So that's it. That's my story. And I'll hand it off to whoever wants to chat next. How about Melissa?
Hey, I'm Melissa. So similar to Mandy and John, I'm currently in the NYU HCAP program. The bulk of my background is actually in finance. And then a couple of years ago, I had a chief of staff role that let me do a lot of strategic work that impacted people, and a lot of people strategy work from the business side. So I've never worked in HR, and honestly, I'm not sure that I ever will. I like the transformation space. I like the analytics. I like, the use cases and applications of analytics to actually drive change, and make things better, but within lens to kind of the end user, the people experience kind of side of things. My hopes, wishes, and dreams here are just to learn from like real people. I get super overwhelmed by LinkedIn, and you see all these people with their profiles and their titles, and they speak at these conferences. And I woke up this morning thinking about being new and being a beginner, and how you're almost sometimes punished for being new, and that's weak and all of this. So I appreciate the openness and willingness to kind of hear from you all and learn from you all as I sort of figure out what's next. Tammy, do you want to share?
Sure. My name is Tammy. I think I might be the only one that is outside the United States. I'm in Canada. on the western side in BC, Vancouver. So I am a human resources advisor, so more of a generalist, but I do some light analytics in Excel. It being something where I've been trying to navigate it and do what I can with the resources that I have, which is not a whole lot of analytics based tools, and trying to generate or stuff that's useful for leadership. So a lot of the things that Mandy was talking about, and making sure that we have some, we generate like resources that you can rely on for return on investment and discussions, and bringing forward programs and stuff like that is something that I'm really interested in, particularly because my organization's really looking at growth. We're trying to grow, but I don't know. We're also losing on one side of the business. It's a little bit crazy where they're trying to offset one with the other. And going at a couple hundred miles per hour while trying to do so. So just trying to keep the ship together. Yeah, that's basically the idea.
I'll go next. This is Shireen. I'm new to this community. I attended one of the webinars a week ago. I've been in the HCM space for the past 13 years. My experience is more focused on HCM technologies and solutions, as well as employee experience. And then taking that further to focus on productivity, linking the employee experience to customer experience, UX design experience, and think about it from a total experience perspective, as well as knowledge management. Mandy, what you said resonated with me around, measuring the impact of what we do on the business and having the data to showcase the impact. Though I have a lot of experience implementing different HR solutions, I still find it difficult to measure value and how to use the different analytics. But that's where I'd like to learn more from others, share what we've done, but learn a lot about what everyone else is doing. I am trying to build a community around employee experience or total experience, but it's really focused again from an HR perspective. And if we can have sessions around data, HR data analytics, and how this links to different areas in the business, to me, that would be really helpful. As well as like, how do you measure productivity? How do you measure system adoption and things like that? So I'm excited to be here, and nice to meet everybody.
Tony, do you want to say hello?
I was hoping you wouldn't call on me, but yes, of course. I might be the odd member of this group because my background is not necessarily HR or HR analytics, so I'm here to learn. But like in the grand scheme of things, our organization is, timidly and cautiously looking at doing a bit more around HR analytics. And again, I don't think there's much buy-in at C-suite level around the importance of analytics, people analytics, the employee experience, the value of that, improving that. So I'm kind of the official, unofficial spearheader of the idea to turn to data to improve the employee experience, human experience in general. My background is health and human services, nonprofits, social work, global program management, as well as research. So, it's a little bit of a personal quest, but it's also aligned with what our organization needs and where we must, go from here on regarding employee experience and what we do with our team members. I'm part of a bigger network of organizations that have around 5,000-6,000 employees, more with PRN, around 9,000 with PRN employees. So it's just like if any of you have any experience of health and human services, this is the industry, and nonprofits, of course, the industry that will be less concerned with employee matters, just because there's less money. You have to stretch it more to help more clients and to do more with less, more with less, more with less all the time. So there's never enough time or focus or money or talent that is, to improve the employee experience, to improve the workplace, to, focus on culture and programs and things like that. So I'm a little bit of in that space where I'm spearheading these concepts in our, system of nonprofit organizations, and just learning more, trying to learn more by joining some groups, some teams that can put me in that space of learning. Sorry for rambling, or if that didn't make sense.
Makes perfect sense. I think we've all been there at some point. So Connie, don't feel at all alone. I think we've all been there.
Thanks.
Sorry, I will have to jump at the half hour, so I just wanted to make sure I contributed. And Connie, thanks for sharing. I think what's most exciting about this particular group is the range of expertise that I've seen, and there's like another 5 to 10 people not here on this call right now. It's just really exciting to have kind of like instant access to people who understand the problem, and maybe they don't have an answer, but they know who to poke. And I think everything that we're doing, I mean, some of us might focus more on, let's say, AI optimization or the finance side. Melissa, I would love to spend an hour talking about finance, people analytics linkage. But then there's also the systems piece and the data and the quality of the data and the processes that go behind the people who enter the data or how it gets collected. And then the privacy aspects and all the considerations around how we want to avoid using things the wrong way and giving people the impression that we're monitoring them. So I think these are all considerations that we as a community are working through, and it's just really fun to have a place. I forget who said it, but to have real people. It's not just a profile. And I think all of us have been to the conferences where like maybe we go to the booth and we talk to the person for a little bit, but this is where you can actually have a discussion and nobody is trying to pitch anything. And maybe that's one rule that we need is like no pitching, right? Or something. There's some kind of like community, I guess, norms that I've seen that have worked particularly well, which is one, and I do like that the fact that we're recording, because that way we can share with others and keep the community growing. But also that means there's kind of like a certain way that meetings should run, and I think we need to settle in on technology. It feels like there's been a lot of discussion about like what is the right stream or link, or how are we going to be posting these things. Maybe just a communications kind of, I don't know if one of us is in that kind of space. It's probably not me, but I think we just stay consistent on whatever it is. I've leaned towards Teams recently. I don't know if, I think some of you might have seen my notes a few weeks ago as I was converting over into a Teams environment. I was like, oh, okay, like there's Microsoft everything, right? But as a Mac user previously, I didn't use any of that stuff. So, but there's got to be a place where we can be like sharing. I got GitHub stuff I can share with people. I have YouTube stuff I could share. I think that the newsletters are great, but I have to admit, I don't know. I think it's the things like this, or even I'm seeing in some other communities, like locally, people actually get together, right? We have the people analytics meetup in New York City and stuff. So, I think those are the places where I'm really seeing the interesting discussion happening.
So just so that I'm clear, Tim, the purpose of this, because I missed the last meeting where I think some of the logistics might have been discussed. The purpose of this meeting, was it to just further define what we want the group to be, sort of means of communication, rules of engagement, or is that not? I just am trying to understand just so that I can be as helpful as possible in terms of refining my thought.
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, we've been operating for, we don't know how long. But yeah, like what's next for the group? Like, how do we take it? How do we take it to the next level? I think there's different, there's different opinions within the group about how structured we should be. Like I'm and probably a lot of his personality, like I'm more of like, I want to know kind of like what we're trying to do and like have it all like planned out. But I know other people are kind of want it to be more organic, which I think that's fine. I think it's, just trying to find, how do we structure in a way that it's inclusive and welcoming for everybody, whether you want to be in a more structured like learning environment, or you want to just have a place where you can kind of come and hang out and meet people. So I think that's kind of the discussion I think that we're having is what does it look like programmatically. Just thinking about like what Daniel was just talking about, like, do we have meetings that are like, do we continue? It seems like having the Friday like expert type meetings, like we bring in guests, and kind of talk about a specific topic. It seems like those are going well. But integrating maybe some more open discussion, kind of like this, but not even necessarily planning, just kind of like, let's like, hey, here's a challenge I'm working on. Has anybody done this? Or like, we're looking for a new applicant tracking system. Like, what are people using? Those kind of discussions. And then, yeah, are there things we can put in place? Like having, do we have like maybe like a planning committee or people that want to be kind of more like me, that want to kind of provide more direction, that we meet separately and do some of that kind of stuff, so that the people that don't want to deal with that can continue. So
I think maybe Daniel already dropped, but he did just say he voted for sort of organic, sort of loose space for, I guess, whole host of different things, but with a core sort of foundation of like a hub or infrastructure, some sort of a platform, which I do think I agree. I mean, I can go organic or structured, that doesn't matter to me, but I do think we need a place where we can go to consistently to not only continue conversation potentially, whether it's some sort of like Slacky type, where sort of internal chats, but also where we can store things like,
right.
to your point, like if there, as somebody mentioned, I think if, what's the best, if you're looking to implement something, who's using what, like, so that information is sort of cataloged there and hopefully easily accessible. I'm not really certain what that right solution is. I'm thinking just in terms of, because we want to move ourselves forward, there's some elements that are working really well. I think no matter what kind of group we are, whether it's organic or more structured, like you need, I think Shireen's going to drop as well. I think we need some sort of rules of engagement. I think that's just, any group has that, even if it's just, basic stuff. And so maybe we can sort of, everybody's working and busy. And so maybe we just choose the things that are most important to start with, and then we just go through one thing at a time. That's just always sort of my perspective, but I leave it to others to maybe there are some other ways of, nailing this.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you. I think my view was similar to yours, where it was like, set it up, but then pick a few things and get some momentum going. create some usefulness, right? And collaboration, and then take inventory again in 3 months versus trying to conquer the entire strategic plan at once.
Yeah.
To me, I agree with what Daniel said, where there's, you know, a mix of things, because you want space to create community so that you grow, and you want space to create community so that conversations happen and people get that usefulness. But I think it's also important that it doesn't feel like another task or a job, right? People don't need another massive to do. But I think it also lets people like have this place to explore and experiment a little bit too.
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, I was talking a lot. I don't know, Laura, if you, or Cami, did you want to have anything you want to say, or Connie?
Well, I'm also, I will just say I agree with what's been said. And I'm personally comfortable with a mix of planning some things out for discussion and letting conversation happen. How we start that conversation can be anything, but I mean, you could just ask, "Hey, what are you working on right now?" And then everybody could kind of give, or what's the day in the life like for you and your job? See where that takes us. And then I haven't been a part of this group. I don't believe I've gone to the information sharing sessions. This is my first time in here. So it sounds like you're doing some experts are visiting and giving a talk and now and then. So love that too. So yeah, I'm just along for the ride, and I'm I'm good with both approaches. So
Um, uh, Tim, so I would love, and Laura, what you just said, like, you know, what does a day in your shoes look like? That sounds really, really cool. I would love to know what different people, you know, do in their daily jobs, what tasks they're trying to, you know, overcome, and what everybody's workday looks like, and challenges, and a mix of that, and maybe hands-on, you know, presenting, you know, some of my challenges that I'm struggling with, and expert presentations. All that looks, you know, and sounds wonderful. And I do agree that there should be like a medium or channel, or a something, you know, a Teams or something where we can meet and drop a line here and there. But I definitely don't know what that is and what that should be.
I'm flexible either way. I just, the draw here is the community and having other people do similar work at what I'm doing, the work that I do with projects and stuff like that, not just supporting managers typically is a bit different from my colleagues. And so that can be a bit of a lonely process, as I've mentioned previously. And this community here, at least there's, you know, like you're making headway and doing things that are different from the rest. And so it's just leaning on that sense of community and supporting each other, and hopefully kind of learning from each other that way. And even just like maybe not doing the exact same thing, but understanding the thought processes would be really nice.
Does
Yeah.
anyone have any? Oh, sorry, Tim, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, because I mean, it's already 12:36, and I wanted to make sure we, you know, whatever the most critical items we were trying to address, that we were able to address it. I think the two things that we've talked a little bit about is sort of rules of engagement, and then sort of settling in on sort of some technology or comms channels, or some sort of a, you know, platform, some sort of hub infrastructure, like Daniel said. So does anyone have any ideas for that? Anything that they're currently using for other groups? Like for other groups, I've been using like some Slack groups, some it just, depends on who wants to host it. So I think there's a lot of openness. It's just about us sort of netting out where is there the space to be able to store resources and information and calendars, things that people can readily access if we want to direct someone to, like, hey, come to this event, check this out, and here's the list of the rest of the events, and it's all located there, and here are the resources, etc. I'm not certain what the right solution is. Tim, do you have any thoughts around that? Have you guys talked about that?
Yeah, and it's funny because that's what, so Tammy, Laura, and I, before, we actually created like a Discord group.
Mm.
But I think for a lot of people just don't use Discord. Like it's big in like the gaming, video gaming,
Yeah.
kind of nerd community.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of the new AI, well, not as many now, but there was a lot of AI sort of first platforms that they were on are on Discord. So you have to
yeah,
access the tools there. So I'm on there, and that would totally work for me. But I guess it really depends on what the broader community feels is easier.
yeah. And that's what drew me to Discord at first, because they had a lot of AI stuff. Like you could build like an AI chatbot. That's what I'd always thought would be a cool thing to have in the future, like the HR science chatbot or something. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, and we actually, so Tammy and Laura and I actually did a lot. Like we built all this stuff. It has like places to build templates. It has like a chat, or just kind of a free form chat. I think we just weren't getting a lot of engagement on it. So that's where I was like, do we need something that's a tool that's a little bit more, people are more familiar
More
with, like
accessible.
Slack?
Yeah.
I think the problem with Slack is like, unless you have the
Yeah.
unless you have the paid version, like it only keeps so much history of previous conversations and stuff, which may not be an issue. We use Teams at work, so I'm familiar with it from a work perspective. I don't know what Teams looks like for like a non,
Right.
organization type thing. What kind of features it has that maybe, I don't know, if more people are familiar with something like Teams, if that would work better. But yeah, I completely agree with everybody saying, I think having a central place. I think John created that LinkedIn group, but a lot of people, LinkedIn groups are just kind of funky. And unless you get on LinkedIn, it can be sometimes just more of the LinkedIn nonsense we've talked
Yeah.
about, like pitches and stuff. So yeah, I agree having a group, but maybe, I don't know, do you think that we try the Discord thing, or do we look at something like Slack or Teams and see if that works better, because that's something more people are familiar with? I don't know.
A good question. I mean, I have an individual like license, so I have Teams, but it feels like there's very limited for me, limited usability for this kind of purpose. So it would need to be something that's based in a paid version. I mean, I have a paid version, but an individual one, and I just don't think it's robust enough. So whatever it is, and to your point for Slack, it will require some investment in order for it to, I think, meet the broader needs. Does Daniel said before he does his own, his own content that he has on, was he exploring maybe us leveraging some portion of his platform? I remember that coming up like a while back. Do you remember if that was at all still in play?
I don't remember with Daniel. I know I was working on, like, because I have my own website. I was adding some stuff on there, and there are like forum, like I was actually just playing around with this, like having like a forum type channel where people can share things. I'm sure there's probably plugins where you can have chat rooms and stuff. Yeah,
I
so
thought he hosted his material on GitHub and whatnot, which was a lot less familiar across the board in general.
Yeah, yeah, definitely more a developer focus. I know John was doing some stuff on GitHub as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you had the idea, Tim, to do a survey of the
Yeah.
group. Maybe this is like a good topic for that and see where there might be some consensus.
yeah,
Make sure to give us multiple choice options, because I'm not sure some of us, will appreciate the open-ended ones. I'm just not very familiar with the different options other than, LinkedIn, Teams, and just the classic ones. I'm ready to try new things, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, almost everything you're going to have to create some account, even on LinkedIn, although, nearly everybody has a LinkedIn account, so that at least there's no barrier there. But, for Discord or, GitHub, like I have a GitHub account, but everyone you need to create something to be able to participate, so,
I don't know if like creating like a LinkedIn profile is such a hardship, because I know that I found this group via LinkedIn. I don't know
right. No,
how
I was saying
anybody
LinkedIn is
else.
probably the most popular and everybody already has it.
Yeah, the only
Yeah.
issue with LinkedIn is that like with every event or whatever it is, it's hard to
Yeah.
find like the links. You have to go through
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. It's not necessarily intuitive, and I don't
Exactly.
know where you would host a repository of information
Yeah.
there, but
I mean, I think ultimately we'll probably end up in a space where we've got multiple, comms channels, because that's typically what I've seen is that, you've got your LinkedIn group where you do certain sort of elements of communication, but then you've got other places and spaces that you use for, whatever it might be. So we may
yeah,
end up
the
in a
special
place
interest
where,
group
yeah,
stuff.
where we do something like that. So who specifically, Melissa, do we already have sort of a base survey that we've started developing, or no, we're just in the early phases of talking about it?
You can keep me honest here, Tim, but I think we're just in the early stages of talking about it.
Yeah, and I can show you. I'd actually put something together that I was going to do in our other group, our Discord group. So I can show you what I did, and maybe this could be a good base. So we're not starting from scratch. Can you all see that on my screen? So yeah, so I put like what type of information.
This is great. This is like hitting some really critical stuff.
Yeah, and then yeah, so it's like what type of information and like the mediums. And then what level of commitment, do you want to be part of the like shaping group? Do you want to just create content? Do you just want to be a community member? And then, if somebody wanted to provide their information. So, I mean, that's basically all it is.
Yeah, no, it looks good. Can you just scroll back up again? Sorry, to the top one. Okay. Do we want to ask maybe a question around sort of topics, things that people might want to focus on, or, get content or resources around? I don't know if that's also something we might want to add just to get a sense of where everybody's leaning.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea because you could have things like analytics, like systems, and
Right.
you could have AI, AI stuff.
AI, data quality,
Yeah,
along with the analytics piece,
yeah,
systems like HRIS and human capital, people systems, basically.
yeah,
And not for limitation necessarily, but just to understand the wide sort of spectrum of interest so that we can think about that from a content perspective.
yeah, yeah. So we have like analytics, HR systems, AI,
I mean, there's probably tons of others.
like HR. I mean, maybe more kind of like HR. Thinking like, is there HR specific? Like John's like really involved in compensation, so like compensation and benefits.
Right, like comp practices, right? So maybe
HR specific topics.
HR specific, right? Employee experience.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's things like like what Dana was talking about, like organizational network analysis. That might fall more into like the analytics piece, but think that. Anybody else have topics that I guess
it's anything
maybe
hot,
more like
any top.
maybe have like ethics.
Yeah, yep. I was gonna say that along that with privacy and ethics considerations, right?
Is it worth breaking out that HR specific topics to see if there's anything that particularly bubbles up?
Yeah. 'Cause we could do like compensation and benefits, employee experience, talent management.
We have comp and ben, employee experience, talent management.
But yeah, the ethics and privacy and
Maybe
I would
something
also
on
say maybe
security.
Oh
like
yeah, you mean ethics, privacy, and security, or
I was thinking like, yeah, security and compliance.
compliance? What about skills? That's such a hot topic, and that's such a, it's really quite focused on impossible to do without some sort of technology solution. And maybe, I would just do in your other, because I mean, there's a list a mile long of talent related things that could be analytics or tech focused. So in the other, maybe give some one or two examples, and then people can just sort of use that as a concept to keep delving in, because there's a million.
So you're thinking
ways
like
this could
other
go.
like,
Yeah, just to because the whole talent management space, it's every aspect of, there's workforce strategy, there's, resource management, like it's a really broad space, and so much of it can't be done without really good analytics, or it can be done, but it's not done well.
Would system utilization fall under just HR
we have
systems?
like health and wellness.
learning and development.
TA.
What was your point, Laura? HR system.
You think system utilization would be under HR systems? Would that sort of fall under?
We could do like HR systems and strategy or something like that. Is that what you're?
Yeah, just I guess how I'm always interested in learning how people are using their HRIS.
Probably do. Sure. Yeah, well, I think we have like kind of a general. I think we'll get a lot of stuff in the other.
Yeah. That's good. Any other like main sort of topics we want to try to capture some info on?
This is maybe a little bit more of an IO psych thing, but like, what about assessments and things like that? Maybe that goes in the other bucket.
That's a
Or
good one.
Or like, there's talent management, but then talent acquisition.
Yeah, talent acquisition.
Because that's like such a hot thing, right? With AI's foray.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll get a lot of
how about like workshops or skills learning or things like that? I mean, all of this, of course.
Certifications,
Yes,
education.
yeah. Certifications and definitely, you know, psychometric assessments and things like that. That's part of the deal.
I think to like, you know, back to the beginnerness of this, but like debunking some things, because like I'm gonna spend years trying to figure out what makes sense unless I go talk to people. Do you know what I mean? As an
Yes.
so that would be like a topic, like newer.
yeah, or just like I don't know how exactly to frame it, but like perspectives, right? Like I've never been drawn to Sherm. Never. There's
Right.
like no part of me that wants to get into it. But I don't know,
Yeah,
am I
I
nuts
agree.
for saying that versus like, you know, so like kind of like that day in the life, like what's the under the hood reality of navigating your career maybe?
I love that.
Yeah, we had, let's see, so like um okay, yeah, so like career,
Navigation. Mhm.
yeah. That above other.
Do we need a separate spot for like languages? Like if people know SQL and R and
Right,
I
and
don't know if
all
that
of,
fits in somewhere else already, but
let's see. So for me, like it would be part of the analytics piece because whether it's open source or whether you're using, you know, some super expensive enterprise analytics system, you know, it all kind of falls under analytics. So maybe if we want to, you mean like in terms of education, Laura, like if people wanted to learn those things or
I'm always interested in what people are, what
what they're
people
using?
have, what they're using every day, how they're using
Mhm.
it.
Give it that maybe like a tools. Um, tool, tools, something. I'm trying to think of the word to use.
And it,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
like
not
there's
sure how to
so
frame it either.
many, you know, some people could use R, but some people may use Alteryx. So there's, yeah, I like the idea of having tools, but I think it's really tightly linked with analytics.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like it would be in parens, like, you know, analytics, you know, then sort of some examples of what that might look like. And it would be like best practices and tools and, you know, use
Fall under that.
cases. Yeah.
So take this out as its own individual. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Unless you're thinking like tools from a human capital perspective, right? Like if you're talking about, you know, Workday versus ADP, you know,
Mm-hmm.
then tools could mean something slightly different.
And it
If
could
it still
fall
have
under,
its,
sorry, yeah,
yeah, right.
fall under the systems
That's
and
true. You have HR systems there, so that's it. So you've already captured it.
Yeah.
So what would be beneficial for this particular item or question is to phrase it as a top 3 or top 5 so that most people wouldn't just choose all.
All of them.
yeah, like I want to know all of those
Yeah,
things.
Top
yeah,
5.
but yeah,
Top-
that would help us prioritize in the first, at least, you know, months or whatnot.
Good
What
call,
most
Connie.
people, yeah.
I was gonna see if it lets me. I don't know if it'll let me restrict on here, but oh, that's a good idea. Oops, there we go.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay. Um, So on this question, are there other things that kind of like types, I guess it's like, yeah, what type of information? Are there other things that would be helpful?
Tim, how are you releasing this survey?
I was thinking that I think we could send it through, we have there's like some email group that John already has, but I was also thinking we could just post it on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn.
I don't know if you have other ideas.
Yeah, no, I think that I don't think there's any other place that we've been community building, right? So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I was also thinking, this is like a great start in terms of a survey, but we could do another survey in like another month's time if we feel like we need to refine the information that we got. So, I feel like this is great as a starting point that hits some of the most critical questions that we have in terms of content and platform.
Okay.
This
Well,
is
also
really great.
I think, let me put my email. Connie, if you want to send me your email address, I can include you. I can send this link, and then if anybody has any other additions to it, and then we can go ahead and post this, and then figure out like a next meeting maybe to go over some of the results and talk about what that looks like.
Sounds good.
But in the meantime, we're still doing the Friday. We're still doing the Friday talk. So if anybody wants to lead one of those, or you have somebody that you think would be a good person to do that, you can send them to me or to Melissa. We've been working together to get those like posted on a calendar and posted on LinkedIn. I think right now we have like next Friday's open, but we have like 3 weeks. We have people booked, and then I think most of June right now we don't have anybody to speak. So yeah, if you have people that you think would be good, or you want to speak yourself, let me know.
Tim, one other question, one other thought just for the survey. Maybe we should ask about the cadence of how often people want to meet.
Yeah.
And then for the sort of rules of engagement, do we have a starting point for that, or I can take a stab at it if we don't have a starting point?
I feel like John had started some stuff, but I'm not sure.
I'll connect with him to see what he has.
Okay.
Okay. And then I could resurface it to the group to see if there's any additional thoughts.
Yeah. So it sounds like, where we are now, we're gonna finalize the survey, send it out, set up maybe one of our Fridays, maybe like one of the Fridays in June we can set up to go over and kind of talk about next steps, and then you're going to connect with John on rules of engagement and send those out.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, we're at 12 o'clock my time, 1 o'clock for most of you all. Yeah, so I think it was a really good discussion. I'm excited. I know John will be excited too. So,
hey Tim, can you add me to your growing group of people who want to get involved on a newsletter?
Yeah.
I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I will do that for
Thank you.
sure.
All right, so we're over the hour, and I hope everybody has a really great weekend.
Yeah.
Too.
Thank you.
All right. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Happy
Bye,
weekend.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.